My name is Jessica Marlowe. I'm 40 years old, and I live in San Jose, California. I'm a tech engineer working at one of those big companies people love to name drop when they talk about Silicon Valley. But the truth is, none of that matters as much as the one role that actually defines my life. I'm a single mother, and my daughter Amelia is everything. I used to have a family that felt complete. Not perfect, nothing ever is, but complete enough that I believe we'd always find our way back to each other after the hard days. That belief died slowly. My husband, Ethan, and I divorced in 2017 when Amelia was only 3. At the time, I didn't fight the way people expected me to. I told myself I was being noble. I told myself Amelia needed her father's steadiness more than she needed my stubbornness in court. So I tried to stay close anyway. 3 visits a week, dinner dates, playground weekends, birthdays where I smiled through the ache in my throat because Amelia deserved joy without guilt. Then life did that thing it loves to do. In 2019, Ethan was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer. And I still remember the way the world sounded after that, like everything was happening underwater. Voices were muffled, time felt thick, even my own breathing seemed too loud. Ethan passed away on a cold autumn afternoon. Amelia was 5. She didn't understand what forever meant yet, but she understood that her dad wasn't coming back. She looked up at me with confused eyes, like she was waiting for me to correct the universe. From that day on, I became the only parent in our home. Every night, when I watched her sleep, I made the same promise like a prayer I couldn't stop repeating. I will protect you twice as hard. I will love you twice as loud. I will not let the world take anything else from you. And maybe that promise is the reason what happened next shattered me the way it did. Because I truly believe my family would never be the danger. My parents, Raymond and Brenda, became our anchor. They visited almost every weekend. They cooked dinner, took Amelia to the park, sometimes even drove us out to Santa Cruz just to watch her run toward the ocean like she could outrun grief. They weren't perfect, but they were consistent. And consistency is what saves children when life becomes chaos. But there was always a shadow in that warmth. My sister, Laura, also had a daughter, Mila. Mila was the same age as Amelia. In the beginning, I hoped they'd grow up like sisters. 2 cousins braided together by holidays and sleepovers. The kind of bond I wished I'd had. Instead, Mila inherited something sharp. Not just a child's selfishness. Kids can be selfish. That's normal. This was different. This was that jealous hunger, that if I can't have it, you shouldn't either energy. And Laura fed it. Not with words, not directly, but with her eyes, with her tone, with the way she'd smile at Mila's whining like it was cute instead of cruel. I noticed it over time, the way you notice mold creeping across a wall. Slow, quiet, easy to deny, until it's everywhere. Still, I never imagined it would escalate into what it became. The story I'm sharing happened on a Sunday in September 2022. Amelia was 8 then, and I was still figuring out how to be both soft and strong at the same time, how to raise a child with tenderness without raising her into fear. That weekend, I had an important client meeting early in the morning. I dropped Amelia at my parents' house the day before because she loved being there. She'd call it Grandma's cozy house and curl up on the couch like it belonged to her. Laura was there too. I didn't love that, but I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself family is family. That lie almost cost my daughter her sense of safety. That night, 1:10 a.m., I was dead asleep in my room when a scream ripped through the house. Not a normal nightmare whimper. A terror scream. The kind that doesn't sound like a child dreaming. It sounds like a child surviving. I don't remember my feet hitting the floor. I don't remember if I called her name. I just remember the surge of panic in my chest as I rushed to Amelia's room and slammed my hand against the light switch. The room flooded bright, and there she was. Amelia sat straight up in bed like she'd been yanked from the bottom of the ocean. Her hair was damp with sweat. Her breathing was frantic, little gasps like she'd been running. Her eyes were wide, but not awake wide. They were haunted. I moved toward her, reaching out instinctively, and the second my arms wrapped around her, she broke. Not gentle crying. Not sniffles. She sobbed like something inside her had cracked open. She clutched her teddy bear so tightly I thought the seams might split. That bear wasn't just a toy. It was the last gift her dad ever gave her, one of the final things he pressed into her hands before the hospital took over his life. Amelia's face buried into my shoulder, and through those sobs she whispered words that made my blood run cold. "Mom, I'm so scared. Please don't send me to the orphanage." I froze. My mind tried to reject what I'd heard, like it was a language I didn't speak. What? I whispered, pulling back just enough to see her face. Why would you say that? Why would you think I'd ever do that? But she couldn't answer. She just kept crying. So I did what mothers do when they don't know how to fix the world. I held her and became the wall between her and whatever was hunting her in her head. It took almost 20 minutes to calm her down. I stroked her hair. I kissed her forehead. I promised her over and over, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. No one is taking you. No one is sending you anywhere. I promise. Eventually, her breathing slowed. The room got quiet. But the fear didn't leave her eyes. I cupped her cheeks gently. Sweetheart, tell me what happened. She stared at me like she was about to step off a cliff. Then, in a trembling voice, she said, You have to promise something first. Anything. You can't tell Aunt Laura. The second she said Laura's name, something in my stomach dropped. I didn't want it to be Laura. I didn't want my mind to go there, but it already had. I hesitated only because I could feel the storm forming in me. I knew if Amelia told me something unforgivable, I might not be able to stay calm. But I also knew my daughter needed safety more than I needed comfort. So I nodded. Okay, I promise, I won't tell Aunt Laura. Only then did Amelia start talking, softly, brokenly, like she was afraid the walls might repeat her. And with every sentence she spoke, my rage grew quieter and colder. Because she told me what happened earlier that morning at my parents' house, while my parents stepped out, and while I was gone, handling the client meeting. She told me about Mila wanting the teddy bear. She told me about Laura's voice changing. She told me about the window. And then she said the words that made my hands shake. She said, if I kept crying, nobody would love me, and they'd send me away. I stayed so still, I think my body forgot how to breathe. I wanted to rush out of the house right then. I wanted to drive to my parents' home, kick down the door, and drag Laura out by her hair. But Amelia was still in my arms, trembling like a leaf. So I swallowed the fury. I hugged her tighter. And I promised her again, with a voice that didn't sound like mine, no one will ever send you away, and no one will ever hurt you again. Around 2 o'clock a.m., Amelia finally fell asleep in my arms. I didn't. I stayed awake until morning, staring into the dark like it was staring back. Every time I looked at her sleeping face, my mind replayed her words. Orphanage. Kneeling. Crying. That bear clutched like a life raft. By 7 o'clock a.m., my anger wasn't loud anymore. It was sharp, focused. The kind of anger that makes decisions. At 8 o'clock a.m., I dropped Amelia off at school like everything was normal, because she needed normal more than I needed revenge. But the second she walked through those doors, I called my company and took the day off. Then I drove straight to my parents' house. It was about 10 miles away, and the entire drive my hands were tight on the steering wheel. Not because I was scared of the road, because I was scared of what I might do once I arrived. When I pulled up in front of their gate, I saw it immediately. Laura's blue Honda Civic, still parked in the yard, so she stayed the night, while my daughter was at home, waking up screaming. While I sat in the dark promising protection, my heart started pounding like a war drum. I rang the doorbell. My parents opened the door with surprise on their faces. My father frowned. Jessica, why are you here? I thought you'd be at work. I didn't answer his question. I asked mine. Is Laura here? My mother glanced at my father, then nodded slowly. Yes, she's upstairs sleeping. Eric already picked up Mila early to take her to school. I didn't even take my shoes off. I walked past them and went straight up the stairs. Each step felt like a countdown. I stopped in front of Laura's bedroom door and knocked. Hard. Again. After a moment, the door swung open and Laura appeared with that irritated, half-awake look, like I was the inconvenience. Jessica, she said, forcing a fake surprise. What's wrong? Why are you here so early? I didn't explain. I grabbed her wrist, and I pulled. Laura yelped, stumbling forward. Ow, what are you doing? Let go of me. My parents hurried up behind me, voices rising. My father barked, Jessica, let Laura go right now. My mother sounded panicked. What is happening? Why are you acting like this? I dragged Laura down the stairs anyway, because something inside me had snapped into a place that didn't care about manners. Not when my daughter had been threatened like she was disposable. When we reached the living room, I let go. Laura rubbed her wrist, eyes wide, shifting fast into victim mode. My father stepped forward, furious. Enough! What's going on? Speak! I turned to Laura first, because I wanted her to hear it straight. Yesterday, I said, voice shaking with restrained rage, you made my daughter kneel for almost an hour, and you threatened to send her to an orphanage. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush glass. My mother's eyes widened. What? Jessica, you're not serious. My father shook his head immediately. No, I don't believe that. Laura wouldn't do that. Laura's mouth opened, like she was ready to perform innocence on command. And that's when I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about what she did. It was about how easily she thought she could get away with it. I started telling them everything. Amelia's scream, the shaking, the words she whispered into my shoulder. When I repeated, "Don't send me to the orphanage," my voice cracked, despite my effort to stay composed. My mother's hand went to her mouth. Laura snapped, sharp as a blade. "She's lying." I turned on her so fast she flinched. "She's 8, I hissed. 8, and she woke up screaming like she was dying. You're telling me she staged that?" Laura's eyes flashed with something ugly. "There's something wrong with her. She has mental health problems. You should take her to a doctor." The moment she said that about my child, my vision went hot. My father's voice thundered, "Laura, tell the truth. Did you make Amelia kneel? Did you threaten her?" Laura started crying instantly, like she'd flipped a switch. "No, I didn't do anything. She's lying to divide the family." I stepped toward her. My hand lifted, without permission from my conscience. I wanted to slap her. I wanted to erase the smugness, the cruelty, the audacity. But then my mother shouted, "Enough!" I froze with my hand in the air, and for 1 sick second I thought she was defending Laura. But she wasn't. My mother turned to my father, voice trembling but firm. "Raymond, we have cameras in the living room and around the house. Check them, right now." The moment she said cameras, Laura's face changed. Not into confusion, into fear. She stammered, "Cameras? Mom, didn't you say they were broken?" And my mother's eyes narrowed, because in that moment, she understood something I had already started to feel in my bones. Laura wasn't confident because she was innocent. She was confident because she thought there would be no proof. My mother's voice went cold. "If you tell the truth now, your father and I might still be willing to forgive you. Don't make him check." Laura stood there, breathing fast, eyes darting like a trapped animal calculating exits. Then she forced a laugh, fake, brittle. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said. "Go ahead, check them." My father pulled out his phone. My mother sat down, hands shaking. And I stood there with my heart pounding, because I knew, in the next few minutes, the truth was going to tear our family in half. The living room felt smaller as my father's thumb tapped across his phone screen. It was such a normal gesture, unlocking an app, scrolling, searching, but the tension in the air made it feel like he was handling a detonator. Laura stood a few feet away, arms folded tight, trying to look bored, trying to look unbothered. But her eyes kept flicking to my father's phone like it was a gun pointed at her chest. My mother sat on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles looked pale. She didn't cry, not yet, but her breathing was shallow, like she didn't want to inhale what was coming. And me? I was standing in the middle of the room, body rigid, jaw clenched, feeling that sick combination of fury and dread, the kind you get when you know you're about to watch something you can never unsee. My father muttered under his breath. "The company fixed this 3 days ago. Where is the recording list?" Laura let out a sharp little laugh. "This is ridiculous. Amelia's a kid. Kids exaggerate. They make things up when they're upset." I spun toward her. "Don't you say her name like that." Laura's face hardened instantly. "Oh, please, Jessica. You've always been dramatic, always acting like the world revolves around you, and you're—" "Stop," my mother whispered, voice trembling. Laura ignored her. "Ever since Ethan died, you've acted like Amelia is the center of the universe, and the rest of us are just supporting characters in your tragedy." The words were poison, delivered with a calmness that chilled me more than shouting ever could. My father looked up sharply. "Laura, enough." But Laura's resentment had been simmering so long it couldn't stop now, not when she felt cornered. "You all treat her like glass," Laura snapped, pointing toward me, like I was the problem. "Like she's so special and fragile, and—" "She is fragile," my mother said, suddenly louder, eyes shining. "She lost her father." Laura rolled her eyes. "People lose parents all the time, Mom." The way she said it, flat, dismissive, made my stomach twist. "Not like this," my mother said, voice shaking. "Not at 5 years old. Not with nightmares. Not with—" "Brenda," my father warned. I stepped forward, unable to hold it in anymore. "You threatened to send her to an orphanage." Laura's gaze snapped to mine. For a fraction of a second, I saw it. Pure irritation. Not confusion. Not disbelief. Irritation. Like I dared to bring it up. Then she masked it with a sneer. She misunderstood. "Misunderstood?" My voice rose, cracking. "She woke up at 1 a.m., sobbing, begging me not to send her away. You call that a misunderstanding?" Laura shrugged. "Kid's dream. She probably had a nightmare and—" "She said you told her," I cut in. "She said you made her kneel." My father's fingers paused on the phone. He looked at Laura, really looked at her, like he was trying to find the daughter he thought he knew. "Laura," he said slowly, Just tell us the truth. Laura's eyes flashed. I am telling the truth. My mother's voice came out broken. Then why are you shaking? Laura blinked, just once, and tightened her posture. I'm not shaking. But she was. It wasn't dramatic tremors. It was subtle. A tapping foot, fingers flexing, a breath that didn't fully settle. The body's quiet confession when the mouth refuses. My father finally found the clip. He inhaled slowly. It's dated yesterday, 10:02 a.m. Laura's face drained so fast it looked like the blood evaporated. My mother lifted a hand to her chest. Oh my God. I didn't move. I couldn't. My whole body was locked in a single thought. Please let me be wrong. Please let this be something else. Please. My father set the phone down on the coffee table and turned the screen outward. All of us, he said, voice hoarse. Watch. Laura swallowed hard. Dad, this is unnecessary. You're humiliating me. You humiliated an 8-year-old, I said, voice low. My father pressed play. The tiny phone speaker crackled, and suddenly our living room was filled with the past. On the screen, my parents' living room, sunlight slanting in, Amelia on the carpet, Mila beside her. At first it looked harmless. 2 kids playing. My mother let out a breath, relieved too early. Then Mila's voice came through the speaker, bright and demanding. Amelia, give me the bear. I really like it. My heart seized. On the screen, Amelia hugged the teddy bear tighter. Even through the grainy footage, I could see the way her shoulders curled around it, protective, instinctive. No, she said, small, firm. This is mine. My dad gave it to me. Mila's face twisted, and she started whining, loud enough to make me flinch. Mom, Amelia won't let me borrow it. Then Laura's voice entered the frame, sharp and impatient. Amelia, give the bear to Mila. It's just a toy. I heard my mother make a little choking sound. On screen, Amelia shook her head, clutching the bear tighter like it was part of her body. No, Aunt Laura, Amelia said softly. It's the last memory I have from my dad. The words hit me like a punch. Even now, 3 years later in this retelling, my throat tightens remembering the way she said it. Not dramatic, not manipulative. Just honest. Laura's voice turned colder. Don't be selfish. Family shares. Give it to Mila right now. Amelia's head shook again. I'm sorry, but I can't. My father paused the video. The sudden silence was like someone shut off oxygen. My father stared at Laura with an expression I'd never seen on him. Pain and rage braided together. Laura, he said slowly, she told you it was her last memory. Laura's eyes were wide, lips parted, but no sound came out. My mother's face crumpled. Tears finally fell. And me? I felt something fierce rise in my chest. Not just anger, pride. Because my daughter stood her ground. 8 years old, outnumbered, cornered, and still protecting what mattered. My father's finger hovered over the play button. My mother whispered, Raymond, maybe... No, my father said, voice like stone. We need to see. He hit play again. Laura on the screen reached down and yanked the teddy bear out of Amelia's arms. Amelia's mouth opened in a scream, pure panic. No, my bear! Then, like it was nothing, Laura turned and threw the teddy bear out the living room window. It happened so fast I almost didn't process it. The bear flew, disappeared, gone. My mother sobbed audibly. My hands clenched so hard my nails dug into my palms. On screen, Amelia sprang up, rushing toward the window, but Laura blocked her body with her own. Be quiet, Laura snapped. If you keep crying, no one will love you anymore. Your grandparents, your mom, everyone will hate you, and you'll go to an orphanage. My mother let out a wail, raw, animal grief, and covered her mouth like she couldn't bear hearing her own daughter's voice. My father's face went red, jaw working like he was chewing rage. I couldn't look away. I watched my Amelia on that screen go still. It was the kind of stillness that happens when a child learns the world can turn on them. On screen, my daughter whispered, Please don't say that. I'll be good. But Laura didn't stop. Do you want to stay here? Laura said, voice dripping with control. Then you'll kneel for 1 hour, and you'll give Mila the bear. Amelia's voice shook. I can't, please, Aunt Laura. Then Laura pulled out her phone and held it to her ear, pretending to dial. She spoke loud enough for Mila and the camera to hear. Hello, I have a child who needs to be sent to an orphanage. Can you pick her up today? My vision blurred with heat. I felt my mother's hand grab my arm, like she knew I might explode even watching it. On screen, Amelia panicked instantly. She started sobbing, hands reaching out. No, please don't. Laura paused like she was enjoying it, like she was savoring the power. Then Amelia choked out, Okay, I'll do it. I'll give Mila the bear. I'll kneel. Laura hung up the phone like she'd just completed a casual call. Good, she said. Now go outside, pick up the bear, bring it back for Mila, and kneel here for an hour." Amelia ran out of frame, and something in my chest cracked, because I knew exactly what that meant. My little girl, who already lost her father, was running outside alone to pick up the last piece of him she had left, because an adult threatened to erase her life. When Amelia came back on screen, the teddy bear looked dirty, like it had been dragged through the world. She handed it to Mila with trembling hands. Mila snatched it happily and sat on the carpet like she'd won a prize. Then Amelia sank to her knees in the middle of the living room. Knees on hardwood. Back straight. Face turned down like she'd learned shame. My father stopped the video again. The room was silent except for my mother's sobbing. Laura stood frozen, mouth slightly open, like she couldn't believe her own actions were real when reflected back at her. My father's voice was low, trembling with contained fury. "You did this while we went to the grocery store?" Laura's lips moved, but no sound came. I took one step forward. "Why," I said, voice shaking, "would you do that to her?" Laura blinked rapidly. Tears began to spill down her cheeks, not soft, regretful tears. Panic tears. Caught tears. She started, then stopped. My mother stood up suddenly, wiping her face with the back of her hand, eyes blazing through grief. "I'm ashamed of you," she whispered. Laura's head snapped up. "Mom!" "No," my mother's voice cracked like a whip. Don't call me Mom right now." Laura's breathing turned frantic. I didn't mean, Mila was upset and You threatened to send her away," I said. "You didn't just take a toy, you took her safety." My father's hands were shaking now. He looked like he might lunge. My mother stepped in front of him instinctively, palms out. "Stop," she warned him. Then she turned, looked straight at Laura with a coldness I'd never seen. "Raymond," she said, voice firm, "call 911. Laura's eyes widened in terror. "What? No, Mom, please." My father didn't hesitate. He picked up his phone again. Laura dropped to her knees in front of my parents, sobbing so hard she was gasping. I'm sorry, please don't call the police, please, I'll never do it again." But my father's face was unmoved. He shook his head slowly. "You went too far." My mother's voice was quiet, deadly. "You crossed a line you can't uncross." Laura turned to me then, eyes wild. "Jessica, please, tell them not to. It was one mistake." "One mistake?" I said, feeling my voice turn icy. "You made my child kneel for an hour. You threatened her with abandonment. You made her believe she was unwanted." My father lifted the phone to his ear. I heard the dial tone. And that's when Laura's desperation turned to rage. She sprang up, tears still wet on her face, and pointed at my parents like a prosecutor. "It's your fault," she screamed. "You always favored her, ever since we were kids." My mother flinched like Laura had slapped her. My father's eyes narrowed. Laura's voice rose higher, shaking with bitterness. "You always praised Jessica, always supported her. When she got divorced, you comforted her. When Ethan died, you treated her like she was the only one who mattered, like the rest of us didn't exist." I stood there, stunned, not because she was jealous, but because she was using jealousy like a weapon to justify cruelty. My mother whispered, "Laura, Amelia lost her father." "That's your excuse," Laura shrieked. "You love Amelia more than Mila. You always have." My father finally exploded. "We have been fair to you," he roared. "If anything, we favored you more." Laura laughed bitterly. "Liar." My father stepped toward her, voice shaking with fury. "When you went to college, I paid for that private tuition. Jessica borrowed money to finish her program. When you wanted to open that salon, I gave you $20,000. Jessica built everything on her own." Laura's face contorted, like she didn't want to hear the truth. My mother added, voice breaking, "When Mila was born, I took 3 months off work to help you. When Ethan died, we could only comfort Jessica with words because there was nothing else we could do." Laura screamed, "You never see me!" And as her words echoed through the room, it hit me. This wasn't just about a teddy bear. This wasn't just about Mila wanting something. This was years of resentment, simmering quietly until it found the easiest target. An 8-year-old little girl. A child who already knew loss. And Laura used that loss like leverage. My father's voice went cold. "Enough. You're over 30 years old. You don't get to justify abusing a child by blaming your parents." The front doorbell rang. Once. Twice. A heavy knock followed. My mother's eyes went wide. My father didn't move at first. He stood there like he'd aged 10 years in 5 minutes. Then he finally walked to the door. And when he opened it, 2 police officers stood on the porch. Their faces were serious, professional. And in that moment, I knew, no matter what happened next, our family would never go back to the way it was. The moment the officers stepped inside, the house seemed to shrink. Their presence sucked the last bit of denial out of the air, leaving only truth and consequences behind. One of them, a tall man with tired eyes, nodded politely. We received a report of possible child abuse. My father didn't waste time. He gestured toward the coffee table, where his phone still lay, the paused video frozen on Amelia's small body, kneeling on the hardwood floor. Yes, my father said, voice strained. Please, watch this. Laura sank onto the sofa as if her legs had given out. Her earlier fury evaporated, replaced by a hollow panic. She stared at the floor, lips moving silently, like she was rehearsing a defense that no longer existed. The officers leaned in. The video played again. I didn't look at the screen this time. I watched their faces instead. The way their brows furrowed. The way their jaws tightened. The way one of them exhaled slowly through his nose when Laura's voice threatened my daughter with abandonment. That reaction alone told me everything. When the video ended, silence filled the room, heavy and final. The shorter officer turned to Laura. Ma'am, he said evenly, you need to come with us for questioning. Laura's head snapped up. This is a misunderstanding. It's a family matter. The officer shook his head. Threatening a child with abandonment and forcing them to kneel as punishment constitutes psychological abuse. My mother's shoulders sagged like the last thread holding her upright had snapped. Laura looked around wildly, searching for an ally. Her gaze landed on me. For a split second, something flickered there, not remorse. Fear and blame. This is your fault, she hissed. You always do this. You always turn them against me. I didn't respond, because at that moment, my silence wasn't weakness. It was distance. The officers guided Laura to her feet. She resisted for half a second, then collapsed into sobs again. Please, she cried, clutching at my mother's sleeve. Mom, don't let them take me. I didn't mean it. I was just disciplining her. My mother gently but firmly pulled her arm away. Discipline doesn't look like terror, she said, voice hollow. The officers escorted Laura toward the door. As they stepped outside, Laura twisted around and screamed one last time, her voice cracking with rage and desperation. Jessica, you've ruined my life. Remember this. The door closed behind them with a dull, final thud. And just like that, my sister was gone. The house felt empty in a way I'd never experienced before. Not quiet, not calm. Hollow. My mother sank back onto the sofa, covering her face with both hands. My father stood still, staring at the door like he expected Laura to burst back in, laughing, shouting, Got you! Telling us it was all a terrible joke. But reality doesn't do that. After a long minute, my mother whispered, I'm sorry. I looked at her. For what? For leaving Amelia alone with her, she said, tears slipping through her fingers. I should have known. My father nodded slowly. If we hadn't gone to the store. I shook my head. This wasn't your fault. If it wasn't that day, it would have been another. I meant it. Because cruelty like Laura's doesn't appear out of nowhere. It waits. That afternoon, I drove home with a heaviness in my chest I couldn't name. How do you explain to a child that her aunt was taken away by police because she did something unforgivable without making the world feel unsafe? When I opened the door, Amelia was sitting on the couch, clutching her teddy bear, eyes flicking up nervously. Mom? She asked softly. I knelt in front of her and pulled her into my arms. It's okay, I said, kissing her hair. You're safe. That evening, my parents came over, quiet, subdued. They knelt in front of Amelia, apologizing over and over, voices breaking. Amelia hugged them back, small arms tight around their necks. Mila came too, standing behind her father, Eric. Eric looked exhausted, like a man who'd just watched his entire life tilt off balance. I'm so sorry, he said, crouching down. What happened to you wasn't right. Mila hesitated, then stepped forward and held out the teddy bear. I'm sorry, she whispered. Amelia took it carefully, hugging it close like it might vanish again. That night, after everyone left, Amelia crawled into my bed without saying a word. I let her stay. Some nights, independence can wait. 3 days later, 2 workers from Child Protective Services knocked on my door. They spoke with Amelia privately for almost an hour. I sat in the kitchen, heart pounding, imagining every possible outcome. When they finished, one of them smiled gently. She's shaken, she said, but she's strong. We recommend therapy to help her process what happened. I nodded. Whatever she needs. Regarding Laura, they explained the consequences. No jail time, first offense, no physical injuries. But a restraining order. Laura was forbidden from contacting Amelia until she turned 18. Laura would also lose custody of Mila temporarily and be required to attend anger management classes. Relief washed over me. Quick, sharp, bittersweet. Justice, but at a cost. A week later, my phone rang. It was the CPS worker. The court ruling was finalized. Everything stood. That night, as I tucked Amelia into bed, she asked quietly, Aunt Laura won't come back, right? I brushed her hair back gently. No, sweetheart, she won't. Amelia nodded, hugging the teddy bear close. Okay, she whispered. 3 years passed. Amelia is 11 now, taller, wiser, with eyes that notice more than they should. Our lives settled into something new. Not the same, but stable. Laura tried to contact me many times, messages, emails, handwritten letters. I ignored them all, until 3 days ago. My mother placed a hand on my shoulder and said softly, "Laura has changed." I looked at her, stunned. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly. "I won't interfere. Whatever you decide, I'll respect." And now I sit here, caught between anger and the idea of forgiveness. Between the woman who raised me and the mother I've become. Between who my sister was and who she claims to be now. I don't know the answer yet. But I do know this. I will never choose peace at the expense of my daughter's safety again. What would you do? I thought the hardest part was over when the police car disappeared down the street. I was wrong. The aftermath was quieter, but heavier. The kind of quiet that presses on your chest when adrenaline fades and reality settles in. That night, after Amelia finally fell asleep, still clutching the teddy bear like it might vanish if she loosened her grip, I sat alone in the living room with all the lights off. The house felt unfamiliar, like it had shifted an inch to the left, just enough that nothing fit the way it used to. I replayed Laura's face in my mind. Not when she was crying, not when she was begging. But when the video started playing, that split second where fear flickered across her eyes, before she realized there was no escape. That was the face of someone who never thought she'd be held accountable. The next morning, my phone rang at 6:30 a.m. It was my father. "Jessica," he said quietly, "we're at the station." I already knew why. Eric had called them in the middle of the night, panicked and confused, after being told his wife had been arrested for child abuse. Mila had woken up crying, asking where her mom was. My parents went to help him navigate the chaos. I didn't go. Not because I didn't care, but because my priority was sitting at the kitchen table, spreading peanut butter on toast, pretending everything was normal for an 11-year-old girl who didn't deserve to carry adult consequences. Amelia ate quietly. Too quietly. After a while, she asked, "Mom, did I do something wrong?" My heart shattered all over again. I knelt in front of her chair and held her face gently. "No," I said firmly. "You did something very brave. You told the truth." She looked down. Aunt Laura looked really angry at me. I swallowed. Sometimes people get angry when they're caught doing something wrong. She nodded slowly, processing. Then she said something that made my breath hitch. She said nobody would love me. I pulled her into my arms instantly. "That was a lie," I said, voice shaking. "A cruel lie." She leaned into me and whispered, "I know." And in that moment, I realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. She was healing, but she would never forget. Later that afternoon, my parents came over again. They looked older, not physically, but emotionally, like the ground under them had cracked and they were still figuring out where to stand. My mother hugged me tightly. "We spoke to the lawyer." I nodded. "What did they say?" My father exhaled. "Laura will be released today. No jail time, but the court is issuing a temporary restraining order. 6 months. No contact with Amelia. No contact with you." My jaw tightened, not in anger, but in relief. "And Mila?" I asked quietly. My mother hesitated. "Custody will be transferred to Eric temporarily. Laura's required to attend anger management classes. Parenting counseling, too." I nodded slowly. It felt fair, not enough to erase the damage, but enough to protect my daughter. That evening, Eric came by with Mila. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. "I don't know how to apologize enough," he said, standing awkwardly by the door. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't." "I believe you," I said honestly. Mila hovered behind him, eyes red and swollen. After a long moment, she stepped forward and held out the teddy bear. Again. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know she'd throw it." Amelia hesitated, then took it. She didn't say anything. She just hugged it to her chest. That silence spoke louder than forgiveness. That night, after they left, my mother sat beside me on the couch. "I keep thinking," she said softly, "about when you and Laura were little." I didn't answer. "You were always so different," she continued. "You internalized pain. Laura externalized it." I turned to her. "That doesn't excuse this." "I know," she said quickly. "I'm not excusing. I'm just trying to understand." I shook my head. "I don't want to understand. I want to protect my child." My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. "And you did." But understanding came anyway, whether I wanted it or not. Because over the next few weeks, pieces of Laura's resentment surfaced through court documents, therapist reports, conversations I overheard but never participated in. She believed she'd always lived in my shadow. That when Ethan died, our parents' compassion toward Amelia became proof, in her mind, that Mila mattered less. She didn't see love as expandable. She saw it as a competition, and she decided to win by breaking a child. 6 months passed. Laura attended every mandated class, completed every program, sent letters through lawyers, through my parents, through Eric. I didn't open a single one. At the end of those 6 months, the restraining order was extended until Amelia turned 18. Permanent protection, legal distance. When the judge read it aloud, my chest finally loosened for the first time in years. 3 years later, Amelia is 11 now. She laughs again, loudly, freely. She still sleeps with the teddy bear, not because she's afraid, but because it reminds her she survived. I have rebuilt my life too. I'm no longer alone. I have a boyfriend now, Daniel, patient, steady, the kind of man who doesn't try to fix my past, but respects the boundaries it carved into me. He knows about Laura. He knows why I flinch at the word family. And he's never once asked me to forgive someone for his comfort. But then, 3 days ago, my mother said something that stirred everything back to life. Laura has changed, she said gently. I asked what she meant. She didn't explain, just placed the choice in my hands and walked away. Now I stand at a crossroads I never wanted, because forgiveness sounds noble, but protection is sacred. And I don't know if there's a version of forgiveness that doesn't cost my daughter something she can never afford to lose again. 3 years. That's how long it had been since the sound of police radios echoed through my parents' living room. Since Amelia learned, far too young, that adults could be cruel on purpose. Since my sister stopped being Aunt Laura and became a name we didn't say out loud. Life didn't magically heal after that. It settled, slowly, carefully, like rebuilding a house after a fire, using different materials, stronger locks, fewer open doors. Amelia is 11 now. She's taller, smarter, quieter in ways that don't worry me anymore, but still alert, like she learned early how to read rooms before she learned long division. She still sleeps with the teddy bear. Not every night, but when she does, I never ask why. Some memories aren't meant to be grown out of. Some are meant to be carried until they don't weigh so much anymore. Our relationship with my parents changed too. It became closer, but more honest. They no longer brushed off small things. They no longer assumed love alone was enough. And I trusted them again, because when it mattered most, they chose my daughter over their own comfort. That choice counts. Laura, on the other hand, became a ghost, a persistent one. At first, she tried calling me directly, numbers I blocked within seconds. Then emails, long ones, apologetic ones, angry ones, spiritual ones, ones filled with therapy language and phrases like taking accountability and healing my inner child. I didn't read them, because I didn't need proof that she'd changed. I needed proof that my daughter would never be hurt again. 6 months after the incident, Laura showed up at my door, unannounced. I remember the way my stomach dropped when I opened it and saw her standing there, thinner, paler, holding flowers like a peace offering she hadn't earned. "Jessica," she whispered, "please, just let me talk." I didn't invite her in. I didn't raise my voice. I simply said, "Leave, now." She tried to cry. I shut the door, and that was the end of it, or so I thought. Until 3 days ago, my parents came over for dinner. It was normal, warm, safe. After Amelia went to her room, my mother stayed behind while my father stepped outside to take a call. She sat beside me on the couch and placed her hand on my shoulder, just like she used to when I was a child, and she wanted to say something that mattered. "Jessica," she said softly, "Laura has changed a lot." The room felt suddenly very quiet. I turned to her. "What do you mean?" She didn't rush to answer. She never does when she knows the words might tilt someone's world. "She's different," my mother continued. "She's calmer. She takes responsibility. She doesn't blame us anymore." I felt something tighten in my chest. "And?" I asked. My mother met my eyes. "I won't interfere. Whatever you decide, I'll respect." Then she stood up, and just like that, she handed me a question with no instructions. That night, I lay awake long after Amelia fell asleep. Daniel noticed. He always does. "You're thinking about her," he said quietly. I nodded. "I hate that I am." He didn't say you should forgive her. He didn't say people change. He just said, "Whatever you decide, it should protect the little girl you fought so hard for." That's when I realized something. This decision was never about Laura. It wasn't about redemption arcs or family reunions or my mother's quiet hope that her children might someday sit at the same table again. It was about trust, and trust isn't rebuilt with apologies. It's rebuilt with time, distance, and proof. Laura lost the right to proximity the moment she made my daughter kneel. The restraining order is still in place. Laura is legally forbidden from contacting Amelia until she turns 18. 7 more years. Sometimes I imagine what forgiveness would even look like. A coffee conversation, a careful truce, a family gathering where everyone pretends the past is behind us. And then I remember Amelia's voice at 1 a.m. Please don't send me away. I remember the video, the kneeling, the fear, and the answer becomes clear. Forgiveness is optional, protection is not. I don't know if I'll ever forgive my sister. Maybe one day when Amelia is grown and chooses for herself what forgiveness means. But as long as I am her mother, as long as my job is to be the wall between her and the world, some doors stay closed. Not out of hatred, but out of love. My story ends here. If you were in my place, what would you do?